Welcome to Cosmosis or Whatever. I'm Celia. I am a psychic medium, tarot reader, spiritual mentor, psychic bae, spiritual bae, honey. This is the first episode and I am too hype. I'm very, very excited. Thank you so much for listening. Today's topic is going to be that the universe is constantly speaking to us. I just had a very enlightening moment meeting a man named Jimmy. Shout out to you, Jimmy, if you're listening to this, because you actually inspired me to finally put out an episode. I recorded the trailer a little while ago and I had put it out to y'all, and I was waiting for the approval to get everything, like to get the podcast itself broadcasted on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you can find podcasts. But I've been waiting for that and it hasn't come through. So I took what happened with Jimmy today as just a sign that I needed to finally just go ahead and record this, because I think I'm being asked to share my voice. So for a little bit of context for the story, recently I took a really big break from my social media. I finally reached 200,000 on TikTok. Woo woo. Thank you guys for supporting me. I super appreciate it. But the engagement has been super low and it's honestly been kind of tiring me out. I'm on TikTok, YouTube. I'm on a site called Hey Hero. I'm doing it all, basically. And here's the podcast, right? On top of all of that. Wonderful. So, I took a little break. My TikTok views and engagement have been really, really low, but everything's been steady. So, I can't really complain. But at the same time, I've just been kind of like in this wandering place, I think, along my life path. And I've been wondering what's next. Where is my path going to take me? I know that there are huge things coming for me. I have so many things in the works. A lot of you guys have heard me talk about it. But I don't know kind of where to start. And I've set the intention with the universe just to be open to receiving that. So I've continue to get these messages from the universe about activating my throat chakra. So for those of you guys who aren't familiar, like a message from the universe, I'll explain it in the story time, right? But I keep getting messages from the universe about activating my throat chakra and like sharing what I have to say. And I'm like, well, I do that anyway all the time. I actually got a reading today from Nyx on TikTok. Shout out to you, Nyx, if you're listening to this at any point. But I got a reading from them and they told me that basically I asked about why my engagement was so low. And basically they were saying that it's a calm before the storm. And that resonated so heavily with me. I was like, that makes so much sense. Because I noticed that my TikTok engagement does go down to give me breaks. Like literally that happens for me, and thank you, universe, for that. But I've been wondering like how though, because I'm like, listen, I talk all day. Like you guys know, some of you guys are coming from TikTok live or possibly my YouTube channel. And if anybody knows me at all, like you guys know I'm constantly talking. So I'm like, well, how is my throat chakra blocked if I'm always talking? And I think it's just about the way in which I communicate with people, how I'm putting things out there versus what I'm actually saying. And Nyx, the reading that they gave me was a lot about being vulnerable, being raw. And again, you guys, most of you know that I'm always like that. I'm kind of an open book. I'm a Sagittarius sun. I am a Mercury. My Mercury is in Scorpio. So if you know anything about the astrology, if you're an astrology girl, you'll know that I'm kind of out here with no nonsense. Like I basically am very blunt, and I'm also really open as a mentor, as a teacher, as somebody on social media who's basically agreed to show a lot of my life. Like I am completely open to showing those things. I've also had several messages from readers of all sorts and messages from my own spirit guides about my life path being very much involved with just living my life and allowing people to see that and inspiring people from that. Okay, so that's just a little bit of context, or maybe a lot, whatever. So I was listening to a podcast episode that I had actually recorded previously. When I first did my trailer, I recorded an episode because I had talked to my sister, and then that episode was going to be about how the truth doesn't exist, basically, and how we shouldn't push our truth necessarily on people. I'll have to make that into another episode because I want to re-record it and tell that story. But I was listening to it on my way to the gas station. So, enter Jimmy. I'm at the gas station. I had just finished listening to my podcast, trying to figure out where to cut it and edit it. And this man, older gentleman, Jimmy, is across the gas pump from me, and he compliments me on my hair. So right now I have in like long faux locks. They're like down to my knees. And he goes, "Oh, your hair is so beautiful." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you," right? And he's like, "How long did it take you to grow that?" And I'm like, I whispered to him, I'm like, "It's not real. It's fake." And so we kind of talk a little bit about that. And then he goes, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" Pause. Okay, so this is really interesting. And I've talked about this before too. But after, I guess I started my business during the pandemic. That's kind of when everything happened. That's when everything came kind of crashing down in my world, and I was kind of asked to readjust. And so I honestly, for the past 2 years I haven't really been out much, out and about and whatever, but I've been very, very focused on my business. I've been very focused on, trying to get things together and, just follow my path. I've become a lot more introverted, I think, because I've been more sensitive to energy, and I just don't have the desire to be out and about. But when I do go out and about, I don't really interact with a whole bunch of people. But when I do, for example, if I've gone on dates, or sometimes when I'm just in the store making conversation, small talk, like Jimmy, with Jimmy, people ask, "Well, what do you do?" And I realized I still get kind of apprehensive about it because quarantine, the virus, the Panini Press has kind of created this little bubble almost for me to live in, and on TikTok and on social media, that I haven't really had to deal with the public, if you will. And a lot of times when I'll make comments on videos or I'll put out certain content, and people come out and they're like, "What? You don't believe in God as a person? You think we have spirit guides? You think you're talking to dead people? You're crazy." I forget that I'm in my own little bubble, and the rest of the world might not be super receptive to that. I forget. I'm so wrapped up in it. But it's also it's very much in the back of my head all the time too. So those two things are at play. So, I told him what I do for a living. I was like, "Yeah, so I'm a psychic and a tarot reader," and he seemed so interested, which most people are, or either interested or freaked out, right? Kind of scared, are you going to cast a spell on me type of thing. But he was super interested, and he was like, "Oh," and so I was kind of telling him how I thought, the things that I believe in, and how it works. And he was like, "Okay, so how do you think that Jesus fits into all of this?" And so it's really funny because Jesus has been definitely a reoccurring theme for me as I've been on this journey. I think definitely kind of breaking through some of my religious trauma that I've had has been a big theme overall, and for a lot of us as we're kind of discovering our own spiritual truths and breaking away from, a lot of religious teachings, or just things that have we've just been almost forced, not actually forced, but, just kind of society has deemed those things as the only things that are appropriate. And so shying away from those things gets kind of, it makes you anxious sometimes, right? So I'm talking to Jimmy about how, I'm making a living off of being a psychic, and I'm talking to Jimmy about Jesus and how I think that, I didn't say spirit guides, right? But that's what I was referring to. I said, I think that people like Jesus, Buddha, whoever, I think that those people, they are dead and not necessarily gone, right? Like their spirits linger around us, and we can tune into their energy to help us, which is essentially the notion of a spirit guide, more or less. It's more complicated than that. I'll do a separate podcast about that one. But he just seems so interested in that. And he was like, wow, he's like, I've heard people talk about stuff like this, but they've never really had like something to back it up. And I was like, well, I could, you know me, I was like, I could back it up. You know, I've been supporting myself off of doing this. I help guide people. And he was like, no, I think it's really interesting. And I had told him that I was just listening to a podcast to edit and put out there. And he was like, oh, wow. He was like, I would love to listen to that. I bet it's interesting and, whatever. And he was like, do you have a business card? Now, the business card thing is funny because this is the second time the universe has told me that I need to get some business cards, because I guess now that the world is opening up from the Panini Press, I'm going to be interacting with humanoids a lot more often in my day-to-day endeavors. So I can't always because Jimmy did not have a phone. Like I said, older gentleman, he did not have a phone on him, and I didn't want to be like, oh yeah, pull out your phone. So I actually asked him to give me a pen, and I wrote on my gas receipt, which is also a funny thing. The universe is, listen, you guys, I cannot stress this enough. The universe is always speaking, and it's always working in our favor. No matter the crazy things that happen to us, sad, depressing, whatever, or the seemingly tiny things, like me printing out a receipt. I never print out receipts at the gas station. Today, I felt like I just pushed it. I actually couldn't see the buttons, and I just pushed yes on accident. But that is what I ended up writing my website and podcast name on to give to Mr. Jimmy, because he asked for a business card, which the universe has already been yelling at me about. I went into one of my favorite crystal shops. Oh, it was 1243, as I just looked at the time that I've been recording. Yeah, so confirmation, it's all around us. If you know, you know. But I was at one of my favorite crystal shops, and somebody noticed that I was buying a lot. They were like, oh wow, what do you do? Right? The infamous question. Well, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm a psychic, I'm a tarot reader. These are actually for a giveaway. I'm doing a giveaway for 200,000. Stay posted for those details. But yeah, they had asked what I'm doing and whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a psychic. And they were like, oh wow, do you have a card that you could put up on the bulletin board? We always have people asking for psychics. And I'm like, no, I don't. And they were like, well, if you ever want to bring one by, we would love to put it up on the board. And I'm like, wow, that's cool. And so I was thinking I need to do that. And guess what? I'm a graphic designer. So doing a business card honestly wouldn't be that hard. And I'm going to talk about in another episode how being a graphic designer has actually made me a better psychic. But anywho, not to go off on a tangent, an ADHD tangent as I do. But basically, all of this to say, spirit guides are all around us, right? I consider Jimmy, in a more or less way, a spirit guide and he didn't even know it. A lot of us don't even know when we are saying something to somebody who it's going to change their entire life. It's just the seemingly small moments, because I just have a feeling, y'all. I just have a feeling. Talking to Mr. Jimmy, having him encourage me to get a business card, encouraging me to get the podcast because he said he wanted to listen to it. And I was like, oh, I found myself tripping. And I was like, dang, I don't have any episodes for you to listen to yet. But then now I felt like I had to do it. So that was literally a half hour ago. I'm here recording it, and I have the chills, and I just feel like this is the beginning of something really, really great. And these are the answers that I have been looking for. So all of that to say, the universe is constantly speaking through other people, through numbers, through nature, hearing things, seeing things, coming across the same types of patterns. You just have to be open to them. You just have to be open to receiving them, going with them, just allowing life to unravel sometimes. It's just as easy as that, but paying attention to it. And not out of like an anxious kind of way, like, oh, I have to look for the signs, because they will make themselves obvious. And the more and more you pay attention to them and like trust them when you do get them and you act on them like I am right now, the more and more they will show themselves to you, and you'll be able to realize them without even thinking, without having to have that anxiety and searching necessarily. It'll fall right in your lap sometimes. Sometimes it won't, but sometimes it will. So I hope that that has been a little bit inspiring for you. This might be a sign for you to get something started, or maybe there was a conversation that you had with somebody recently, or a reading that you saw or whatever, and like, just do it. Go after it. Pay attention to the universe. It's always speaking to us. Like, I can't stress that enough. But anyway, I hope that you guys have enjoyed this episode. Let me know what you guys think. Go put the comments somewhere on my Instagram or on my TikTok. I would love the engagement. That would be helpful. Look out for my Patreon. I'm launching it next month in February. That'll be a good way for you guys to get a little bit more access to this type of content and a lot of the other knowledge, conversations, things that I have to share with you guys, resources, products and services that I'm going to be offering. So I will see y'all around the internet. Thanks for listening.